Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our community conversation. We will start here in about 4 minutes at 6 p.m. to share some factual information about our upcoming renewal levy. Well, once again, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Dr. Cameron Ryba, the superintendent, and joining me tonight, and they'll be on camera shortly when they'll help me out with the presentation, is our treasurer, George Anagnostou, and our board president, Richard Micko. So tonight, we are here to start sharing additional information about our upcoming renewal levy that's going to be on the March 19, 2024 ballot. And so our goal today is to share some additional information with you, to talk directly to some of the questions or comments that have been going around the community with regard to the renewal levy that was put on the November ballot and is again going to be on the March ballot, to ensure that you are armed with the facts so that you can make the decision that you feel is best for our school district and our community moving forward. So as we start to talk about the renewal levy and the finances that go to support all the great work that's happening across our district, it's important to start with, where do we want to go? What's our aspirational goal? What is our purpose, the why behind our existence as a school district? And that is to inspire and empower today's learners to build tomorrow's leaders. So our job, our focus as a school district is to create that fire, to create that passion within our students, and then share with them the control and the ownership of their own learning so that we can develop within them during their 13 years with us the skills necessary to not only have successful future in their life, whether that be college or career or military, but so they can be great community members to give back, to support a great city like Strongsville, a state like Ohio, and our country as a whole. And so all the work that we do, and funding is necessary to do this work, is about ensuring that we are developing our students today so that they can be successful citizens and leaders for all of us tomorrow. And the pathway to help us realize our purpose is through our strategic plan. We surveyed the community extensively last year to hear where we're doing well, what are some bright spots, what are some areas for growth and further development. And we created a 3-year strategic plan that is aligned under 4 strategic priorities. That in the next 3 years, we're going to continue our work to transform teaching and learning. That we are going to align staff and resources in this work by also cultivating a strong culture and climate within our students and staff and our parents and our community. And why we're here tonight is to understand how we have to leverage not only our facilities, but our funding to make this all happen to help us reach our aspirational goal and our purpose. And so our pathway to this purpose is our strategic plan, but also our mission statement that as a school community, we're going to design a premier educational experiences that develop what we call our model Mustang competencies. Content and curriculum are extremely important, but it's even more powerful when you pair those with skills and durable skills and competencies that are going to be applicable no matter what pathway our students go to. And we've identified for our school district that we want to develop those skills within our students so that they're innovative, that they're resilient, collaborative, that they have a global mindset, and that they are empowered so that they can be the architects of their learning and thrive in their future, which, as we know, is very different than the pathway that we may have come as adults right now, as it's exponentially changing. So again, we have a clear vision for the district moving forward that is built on strategic priorities that came from our parents, our community, and our staff. And we're realizing that purpose by embodying our mission on a daily basis for the betterment of our students, our district, and our community as a whole. And so as we look at educating students in 2024, it has become exponentially a more challenging and increasing diversity of needs that are present within our classrooms every day. So it's not just about, hey, let's do the 4 R's like we've always done, or just keeping hold of our tried and true practices that have served us well for a while. But we've got to reimagine the classroom based on the learning needs of students that are with us today. We've got to take a look at growing needs for our students in terms of social emotional needs, as well as mental health supports that may not have needed to be there as much as they need to be there today. The increasing need of technology and integration of technology in a meaningful way throughout our district is an exponentially increasing need. And as you take a look at and we hear about artificial intelligence in our society, that is also true in our school district about how we can use artificial intelligence to help support the education and learning of our students. We want to look at creating opportunities inside and outside of the classroom that meet the diversified needs of our learners, while also looking at different career pathways and career education pathways for our students, as well as we've talked about facility needs and funding needs to make all of this a reality so we can continue to grow and develop as a premier school district as we have over the past 10 years. And so we're here today to talk to you about the facts regarding issue 25, which is the renewal issue that will be on the March 19, 2024 ballot. Again, it's a renewal issue that means no new taxes on the tax bill. So it is a 5.9 mil 5-year operating levy that was initially approved by the voters in May of 2019. So when we had that May issue, our voters said, hey, we don't want a continuing levy at that time that is permanent. Every 5 years, we want to reevaluate and use our vote to say, how is the school district doing? So that's where we're at in the cycle, keeping that promise to the community that every 5 years you will have a say in this. And so this is that levy that was first passed in May 2019. This is the opportunity for the community to determine the support of that issue moving forward. As we take a look at this 5.9 mil levy, what that generates in operating funds that go for our general fund in our district is about $10 million a year. So it is a significant amount of funding that goes to the operations portion of our district, and we'll get more into those details here shortly. And then, as I previously stated, a renewal levy is a continuation of a previously approved levy, which means there's going to be no new taxes added to your tax bill with this renewal issue. So with this, as we get into some of the details, I'm going to now turn it over to our treasurer, George Adegnastu, who's going to take it from here as we talk about our 5-year forecast.
Thank you, Dr. Ryba. As Dr. Ryba mentioned, this is our 5-year forecast. And the purpose of the 5-year forecast, it is something that we must present to the board and the community twice a year, once in November and in May, and after each time also filed to the state. The purpose of the 5-year forecast is to engage the local Board of Education and community in the long-range planning and discussion of the financial issues facing the school district. Serves as a basis of determining school district's ability to certify contracts, to provide a method for the Department of Education and the Auditor of State's Office to identify school districts with potential financial problems. And then the methodology that goes behind the forecast is prepared based upon historical trends and current factors. The information then is extrapolated into estimates for subsequent years. The forecast variables can change multiple times throughout the fiscal year, while cash flow monitoring helps identify unexpected variances. No process is guaranteed. However, the intent is to provide the district's financial trend over time and a roadmap decisions aimed at encouraging financial sustainability and stability. And how to read the 5-year forecast? The way it works is the columns to the left are 3 historical fiscal years. Fiscal year 2023 is the one that just passed. Fiscal year 2024 is the one that we're currently in, and then 4 years projected, with 2025 being next school year. As you will see, the key item here, lines I want to point out, is our revenues over expenses. What that means is, are we bringing in more money than we're spending, or vice versa? Are we spending more money than what we're bringing in? In fiscal year 2020, the one prior to the one shown on the graph, that was the first year that we started collecting on the 2019 5.9 mil levy. We received half of that in that fiscal year based on the calendars. And then in 2021, we started receiving the full amount. And as you will see, the revenues over expenditures, yes, we do see revenues exceeding expenses during those years. As when we passed the levy, we were looking at, the board was looking at a number that would last for a 10-year period. So in the beginning years, we would see more revenues exceeding expenditures, while on the back end, that would start to catch up, and then starting to burn down that cash balance as we will highlight here shortly. So in 2021, the first year collections, and then also our expenditures were a little less that year due to partial year being remote learning. We're 11.4 million. Fiscal year 22, 9.2 million. In fiscal year 23, although it shows as a negative 16.3 million, we did have, and I'll discuss it in a few slides, we had a $25 million transfer to a capital projects fund that was moved from the general fund to support future projects in the future, which increased that number. But if we take that 25 million out and kind of have an apples to apples comparison, it's 8.7 million, and then in fiscal year 24, 2.6, and then beginning next fiscal year, we'll begin that deficit spend. But before I get to that point, a couple of things with the expenditures. For fiscal year 23, if we minus out that 25 million from the 104, our expenditures were 79.6 million, which was 5 million or 6.7% higher than the previous year. Moving in this year, we've seen increase in expenditures with our healthcare increase by 15%. We had additional staffing positions to cover enrollment and student needs. We're seeing an increase for this year in expenses of about 5.46 million through December, of comparing last December to this December. And in the future years, next year, we're projecting an increase of 5.67%. and the future years about 4 to 3%. And then also with revenues as well, 21 was the first year of the full levy cycle. In 22, we did see a dip due to a large property tax refund that the county gave back. And then in 23, we had that refund wasn't there, but also in 23 and 24, we were collecting higher interest revenues. And then in 25, we do see the revenues drop, and that's due to the way that the state has us report the 5-year forecast. We must assume that the renewal, if we have renewals, they're taken out of revenues in the years that they're expired, and then they're added in the back. So where it's showing for fiscal year 25, the deficit spend of 7.1. If the renewal levy were renewed, that deficit spend would be about 2.3 million. And then for fiscal year 26, it'd be about 5 million and so on. And then in the last year, the number gets larger. We also have another renewal levy. So that's both of those in those years that are coming off. But if the renewal is not renewed, this is our financial outlook of, as you'll see, we're spending more than what we're bringing in, and it's accelerated. And then the cash balance is being spent down in 25 and 26, and then 27 down to 7.2 million. So one of the purpose of this presentation, this conversation, we wanted to address questions that we were hearing throughout the community. One of those is I keep hearing the district has a large cash balance. What are the facts? School districts are required to operate in the positive. As I mentioned, the purpose of the 5-year forecast, one of those is to provide a method for the Department of Education and the Auditor's Office to identify school districts with potential financial problems. If we get to that point where we have a large deficit, the Auditor of State and the Ohio Department of Education will start working with us on how do we create a sustainable future. The next point, we use the 5-year forecast to maintain that healthy cash balance. Our levies are a fixed dollar amount. That's why we went over a 10-year period, and we saw those spikes in the beginning. And over the past years, we've increased the general fund staffing by 40 positions due to increased enrollment, coupled with additional student supports. Over the past 2 years, our health care costs have increased by 8.7% and 15%. And along with that, just like anything else with inflation over the past few years, everything has gone up in costs. When this renewal levy was originally passed, the goal was for it to last for 10 years, which I'll highlight on the next slide. We'll see a spike in the beginning. We're kind of topping up. We're peaking to that spike, and then in those out years, we'll start spending down. And then at the end of this year, our general fund, or at the end of last school year, going into this school year, our general operating fund was about 46.1 million. And what that means in number of cash days, Cameron, if you want to go to the next slide. Our days cash on hand. What we were looking, in May, we worked with our finance committee to develop a cash balance policy, and we were looking at what is a sustainable future and just having benchmarks and good cash balance practices. So we were looking at a minimum of 90 days on hand with a max of 150, and anything over 150 days of the rolling 5-year forecast to invest in the future projects. That's where we developed that 070 fund to move the funds over. But to highlight, in the beginning, we started collecting the levy in 2020. As you will see, our cash balance there began to increase, and we started to increase in fiscal year 22. In last fiscal year 23, we did move $25 million over to the 070 fund, which we saw a dip. And then throughout the life of the 5-year forecast, we're maintaining within that minimum of 90 days. The last year was about 87 days, 3 years short, but in full retrospect, we're within that cash balance policy of the 90 days within the 5-year forecast. The other question, I keep hearing that the district is hiding $25 million. What are the facts? As I stated with the previous slide, in the spring, with the work of the district's finance committee, a group comprised of local community members and business professionals recommended, and the Board of Education adopted a policy, a cash reserve policy. We had those discussions at a public board meeting with a board vote at that time during those meetings. The policy addresses minimum standards for cash balance as to when the board should consider a new levy and or cost reductions, as well as cash balance maximums within the general operating fund, where the board may wish to invest one-time dollars back in the district. And that's where by creating an 070 fund, the district has given the fund's purpose and direction for investment back into the schools. In practice, this was slated to offset the bond request to the community for facility needs. And as stated, we moved that $25 million, which was aligned to our policy, and the board approved that along with the policy. And this fund now is more immediate need due to the failure of the November 23 renewal that would delay a bond issue and create a demand to potential use of these funds for critical repairs for our buildings.
So as we move on, so far we've heard about, here's the big overview of our 5-year forecast that George so eloquently detailed each aspect of it. And we've talked about why is it so important that a school district at certain times has a larger cash balance to carry through the levy cycle, as well as why it's best practice to use the cash balance policy to determine what do we do at certain minimums or maximums, and how can we best utilize those dollars for one-time expenses that go back into our district, back into our students. And so one of the other things that we're hearing in the conversations around the community is, hey, why is the district just holding on to this big cash balance? It's not, they're holding on to it like a savings account and not investing it in our kids. Well, I want to tell you the facts are that's completely opposite of what's been happening since the May 2000 levy was approved by the voters. So one of the things we need to remember is when we approve a levy, we do not get those dollars immediately. It takes a minute for tax years to start collecting, and then we get half of that tax revenue in the next year in 2020, and then we get the full amount moving forward. So we're not able to take all of those dollars and reinvest right away. But over the last 5 years, we've invested about $2.5 million of annual new expenses that are going back to help support our district and our students on a day-to-day basis. We've also invested in $400 of one-time investments, purchases that were needed to support our kids and our district moving forward. So if you take a look at that span, that is a significant investment that we're making back into the district to support the needs that we just said, to aspire to our purpose, to live our mission, to make sure we're meeting the needs of a whole child. The other thing that we want everybody to think about is, even though we use analogies between here's what we do in school finance and here's what we do in our personal finance, it's not a one-to-one correlation. And you can't think of our cash reserve just like the savings account that you have at home. A savings account you may have at home may be used for a rainy day fund, or it may be used for a nice vacation if you have that. Our cash balance is used specifically to take care of expenses in the later years of a levy cycle. And what I mean by that is, if a levy cycle is supposed to last 10 years, in years 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, that cash balance is not a nice to have. It's a must have, so that we can extend that levy cycle in those out years, so that we do not need to come back to the community for more money. And we'll talk later about why the board has given guidance and we've selected that 10-year cycle. So I want to share with you some details of where we've invested back into our school district. First of all, we've invested in academics. And I'm not going to read through every aspect of this slide, just highlight a few things. That in the last 5 years, we've expanded the technology, whether it be hardware and Chromebooks that our students have, and that we have a one-to-one program across the district, plus software applications and supports that we have. We've expanded career opportunities and course offerings for our students. We've provided training for our teachers in the science of reading, even ahead of when the state has mandated that as a literacy initiative across the district. We've increased maker spaces throughout our school districts and have maintained class sizes, and just a smattering of staff that we've added to have a direct impact on student needs, meaning, hey, we have more students that are coming to our school district than ever before that are speaking English as a second language. We need more English language teachers in the district. We've had to invest and provide those staffing changes to do that. We provided reading specialists at the elementary building to help our struggling readers at that level. We provided coaches and training to help our teachers so that they're equipped with the best knowledge and tools and professional development to meet the needs of our students in the classrooms today. So through positions, through technology, through training, that's a part of that $2.5 million of annual investment, or the $400,000 of one-time expenses. But it goes beyond the classroom, and we're talking about athletics and arts as well. Some of these are positional with the addition of an assistant athletic director. But we took a look at our coaching levels. We took a look at the amount of general fund dollars that were supporting our athletic budget and made a significant investment into our athletic programs, as well as including new opportunities, either athletic in the high school or in the middle school, to increase those opportunities in athletics for our students. And we did that also in the arts and music, whether it be new teachers, new extracurriculars in music or theater, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we've invested as a school district to support ongoing instrument replacements for our orchestra and our band and our marching band, to cool things like a recording lab at the high school where we could do podcasting or demo music in there, as well as expanding our art offerings to more students at the middle school. And finally, going on, investing more into our students, increasing extracurricular opportunities at all levels outside of athletics, outside of music. We've increased them at the elementary level, we've increased them at the middle school level and the high school level, and also brought an intramurals program. And you could read here on the screen some of the highlights of exactly what has started this year because of that investment. We talked about earlier, we've got to consider the growing social, emotional, and mental health needs of our students. And yes, as a school district, we've got to provide supports for that. So whether that be adding new guidance counselors, so we have one per every elementary building, or adding social workers, that now we have 2 in the district where prior we had none, or partnerships where it doesn't cost the district money but provides that service for more clinical-based mental health support in the school district. Safety and security is a large item, and we've been fortunate to also be able to procure a lot of grants across the state to have full-time SROs at our middle school and high school, and rotating SROs at our preschool and elementary buildings, as well as you could see some of the highlights of the safety enhancements that have ensured that we've met all of the requests of the Strongsville Police and Strongsville Fire Department in terms of equipment, training, tools, and resources that are needed to ensure our buildings and our classrooms and our students and staff are safe. And so with that, I'm going to now turn it over to Mr. Micko, who's going to share some highlights on this next portion of the presentation.
So thanks everyone for joining us this evening. And one of the questions that we keep on hearing about this renewal is that the district only needs half of what they are asking for, and the taxpayer should be given the other half back. And so this one is really a board level decision. And what I want to share with the community is that beginning next fiscal year, we are projected, according to our 5-year forecast, to begin deficit spending. And what that means is we will start to spend down that reserve. So for example, our expenditures are increasing by that 5.67% from the current fiscal year to the next fiscal year. I don't have to explain to everyone that with inflation as it is now, everything costs more. So what the board had to consider is, can we realistically cut the levy in half, and what would be the consequences of that? Well, cutting it in half would mean that we would burn through our cash reserves even quicker because we wouldn't be able to maintain those cash reserves. As an example, if I had an income of $100,000 a year and I cut it in half, well, that example almost seems foolish because I would not be able to sustain or maintain what I'm doing now at $50,000 a year. I'm a visual learner, so I think the next slide will help illustrate that. And so the graph on the left shows where our general fund cash balance is projected to be if the levy is renewed. And that's the full levy. And that's that green line. And you can see in fiscal year 2028, we're around $25 million on our cash reserve balance. If we would have considered a half levy, the projection in fiscal year 2028, we are below $10 million. And at that point, based on our cash balance policy for sound fiscal planning, we're looking at an increase coming to the voters, coming to the taxpayer and saying, we need to increase. And now we're looking that same cycle of every 3 to 4 years coming to the community and asking for an increase in our levy, which becomes an increase in our taxes. Another way to look at it is the graph on the right. And you can see that that half levy, while it sounds reasonable, in fiscal year 2028, you can see what a drastic change that would have for our days cash on hand. And it would mean, once again, the board would either have to consider cuts to our programming or coming to the taxpayer for an increase. And that's one of the reasons that the board voted to stay the course and ask for the voters' approval of the full levy, because financially speaking, while the dollars are there, it puts us in a really bad position. And our goal is to make sure that our school district is healthy short-term and long-term.
And so as we move to continue on what Mr. Micko was sharing and look at another question that we're hearing is, hey, I keep hearing the district will be fine without this renewal, and we should just ask the taxpayers for new funding when it's needed. And so I want to share a story from our past, Strongsville City Schools past in 2007. So in 2007, a levy was passed. It was passed close to when the district was going to be in one of those fiscal emergency watch caution categories because the cash balance was so low. And the new money was passed, at a later date. And really the money that was passed, it wasn't about investing into the school district or adding new opportunities for the students. It was about balancing the budget and getting rid of the deficit. And in 2007, a levy was passed. They were able to balance the budget, but just a few years later, they had to make multi-million-dollar cuts to avoid another deficit cliff that was coming down the pike. That does not set up a school district well for meeting the needs of its students and being the district that we all want Strongsville to be for our community and for our kids. And so we want to learn from our past so that we don't replicate those patterns in the future. And so as Mr. Micko shared, that if the board would have approved a half a levy or would have said, hey, we're okay right now, we'll come to the voters when the cash balance is almost depleted, it would speed up that cycle. We need to come back to the voters sooner. We need to come back at a higher millage rate. We need to come back more frequently. And we would need to consider what types of investments are we making that's going to meet the needs of our students so that they can have a bright future that they so deserve. The other thing we talked about is, remember that when a levy is passed by a community, those funds are not immediately available because they're based on collection years, not approval years. So one of the things that we've taken a look at as a school district is going with this approach. And by we, I mean the Board of Education and George and me have taken a look at and saying, okay, there's some school districts that go out on the ballot every 4 to 5 years to ask the community for support of an operating fund. In our community, if you take a look at historically for our community since 1985, there have been 24 requests from the school district for new operating funds. The community has only approved 7 out of those 24, which is a 29% approval rate. And so through conversations and discussion, as well as how our community is voting, it's saying, hey, we would rather not have you come to us for new operating money frequently, but we'd rather have you make it last as long as you possibly could. That's why in 2019, the board said, hey, project this out so we can have the 2019 levy last us through at least 26, 27, and we're going to hit that mark that they set and be able to make it sustain that long. That's why when you have levy cycles that are that long, you have a higher cash balance in the beginning years that are depleted and used to make the levy last longer in the out years, as we've talked about. Hey, if you also don't want to, if you listen to our history, listen to this data, but you want to see this is happening right now. So take a look at some of our neighboring school districts and that are in the area that went on the ballot in November. They were towards the end of their levy cycle. They went on the ballot, and unfortunately, their community didn't support their levy. What they're in a position now to do is to make drastic cuts to address their budget deficit, and that's taking away opportunities, experiences, and what's in the best interests of our students moving forward because of that time period between when they asked and when the deficit is going to hit. So through this proactive financial planning, we are able to level that out, keep our duration longer for our communities, while still continuing to grow and meet the ever-changing needs of our students. And so if the renewal levy is not renewed in March, then we as a district will also have to make determinations on next steps based on our short and long-term forecasts, and balancing that financial prudence as well as anticipating those future needs, understanding the level of community support that may or may not be there based on how March election goes. So I think it's also important. I'm going to ask George to come back on camera here as I kind of conclude with this slide. One of the things that I think is important to share is where are we as a school district comparatively to other school districts with our finances around the county and other districts that we tend to be comparative as similar districts. So George is going to highlight a few of those slides for us.
Thank you, Dr. Ryba. But before we do that, we have the 5-year forecast summary. As Dr. Ryba was stating, with our current forecast for this year, we're projected our revenues to exceed our expenditures and increase the cash balance by a few $1 million with $48.5 million. And then next year, if our forecast holds true, we'll begin that deficit spend. And we're looking in the green box. That's if these renewal levies are approved. That we have 2 of them out there, and both of them will show in fiscal year 28. But if both are approved, we will start that back end. We'll be burning through our cash balances. And then the other part that I want to highlight here is as the deficit spend begins greater, we're also relying on that cash balance to help us with cash flow. I think what's important to note, what these cash balances that we're showing here, that's for one point in time in the year. That's as of June 30th. Our cash balances ebb and flows throughout the year. Property taxes are our biggest source of revenue. And as you think about when you pay your tax bill, you pay that twice a year. So that means our collections are only twice a year. So the last time we received a significant chunk of our revenue was in August. So with our cash balance and the money that we received in August, from September through now in the middle of January, we received a small payment last week. We had to work with our expenditures with our cash balance and the revenue that we received in August. And then our next big payment from the county is going to be in February. So as our expenses are about $6 million a month, we have to make that, we have to meet our obligations, whether it's payroll and our expenses, as we receive revenues twice a year. So we hit those ups and downs with cash flow, and having balance helps with those. And dating back, as learning through our past, as Cameron stated, back in those early 2010 years, in December, this part of the year, December, January, is the low point for cash balances, as you have those expenses. And the last time you received property taxes was in August. The district was borrowing money to meet borrowing money against the tax collections to meet payroll obligations. So that's another need while we want to address while we have these as we start the deficit spend. And then if they're looking in the red box, if the renewal levies are not passed, as you will see, our deficit spend and the drawdown on our cash balance is accelerated, and it's going to cause some challenges when we're looking at these low periods for our cash flow. And then how our expenditures compare to neighboring school districts. We're about in the middle. This is newly released from the Ohio Department of Education for last school year. We were about $16,130 spent per pupil. As you can see, based on our neighboring districts, we were in the ballpark. Solon was at the top end, and then with Berea, Strongsville, and Brecksville, we're kind of in the middle there. And then our property tax rate as it compares to Strongsville City Schools. As you just now received your new tax bills for this portion of the tax collection for school district taxes, we ranked 25 last year. There were some school issues that were approved in November, so now we rank 26 out of 31 in residential effective rate. What that means is only 5 Cuyahoga County districts have a lower tax rate in Cuyahoga County, meaning if you were to live in one of the other districts that's above us, for the same value of your house, you'd be paying more taxes. So we do have a good value for our school district. And in comparison, we pay less school taxes in comparison to 81 other school districts in Cuyahoga County with the same home valuation. And then the last slide I wanted to show here was just our tax rate from our school residential effective rate for this school year compared to last school year, or not last school, 5 years ago. So tax year 2019, collection year 2020, that was the first year with 5.9 mil levy. So our total authorized rate increased to 87.48%, 87.48 mils. Our effective rate at that time was 43.73 mils, with a total tax per 100,000 valuation was $1,339. If you look at it for the current collection year, our authorized rate dropped to 86.68. What you'll see there, the difference there is the bond issue, the 2013 $1 million bond issue. Originally when that was passed, that was 3 mils. It was then dropped to 2.8. Now it's at 2 mils. We were able to decrease that due to a refinancing in September of 2020, which saved the district taxpayers about $20 million over the life of the bond, which amounts to annual savings of $30 per $100,000 of valuation. So what that means and the impact is we're able to take that authorized rate of 3 mils and bring it down to 2 mils. So it's a savings there. And then also as our assessed valuations have increased throughout the years, so we're not bringing in more money than what the voters had passed, the effective rate dropped. So with that, the effective rate for the general fund decreased from 34.58 to 30.06, and in a combination with bond over the 5-year period of time, the effective millage rate has dropped by 5.41 mils, and for the same value of $100,000, taking that a house valued at $100,000 compared to $100,000 5 years ago, the tax liability decreased by $165.68 compared to that collection year.
So George, stay online for a second. So just to be clear and say it simply, even though we had a new tax levy in May 2019, in 2020, tax year 2023, per $100,000 is $165.68 less than 5 years ago.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So that's because of George's great work that him and his department does, and the refinancing of the bond issue and a variety of other factors. But the idea being that it's a great value to live in Strongsville, to get the quality of education that you're having. And as we looked at that last graph, we're actually seeing the effective rate go down that the taxpayers are having to pay across the city. So we wanted to wrap up the final few moments of this presentation and just kind of a catch-all of what are other facts, things that I should know to make an informed decision as we get close in on March 2024 with our renewal levy on the ballot. First of all, I think it's important to know that it's not just about what we're saying internally. It's about what external reviews are saying about us. So we'll share some examples, but we have continuous recognitions and endorsements in all aspects of our financial reporting, budgeting, and financial practices. One of the things that we did last year is we surveyed our staff and our community. And one of the questions we had was, what is the confidence that you have in our finances and our financial transparency? And from both groups, the rate of return of we feel positive about it was 90% plus. So our community has that trust in George and his team. The external reviewers have that trust in our team and their financial practices. And so we need to put trust in an expert in school finance. So my title is, I have the title of doctor. I hope nobody will ever take medical advice from me because my doctorate is in educational leadership. You know, there's a lot of folks out there that have a finance degree or work in the financial sector, but school finance is its own animal. It's its own being. And so I would hope when we take a look at and listen to people that do the job of school treasurer, that's where we're going to put our credit. That's where we're going to put our emphasis on, is listening to the folks that are experts in the field, that are doing the work day in and day out, that are being recognized locally and nationally for the work. That's where we need to pay attention to and listen to for the facts as we make this important decision coming up. As George shared earlier as well, it's a great value. We have a tax value that is less than 81% of the other school districts in Cuyahoga County, yet we perform in the top tier of districts in the region and across the state. We've listened, you know, one of the things we hear is, you know, listen to the taxpayers. We have listened to the taxpayers. We went from a continuing levy in 2018 and came back for a limited levy in 2019. We heard that we don't want to see you on the ballot all the time, so we've made the money stretch for 8 to 10 years. And we've done it by investing strategically and incrementally where we could sustain it for years on out so that we can make sure the kids have that support, services, and opportunities moving forward, because we spend within our means and maximize our investments in our students. So to share some of the highlights about how we perform financially and academically, I'm going to turn it back over to our board president, Mr. Micco.
Thanks again, Cameron. So this is our chance to, I don't want to say toot our own horn, but to show how external bodies are recognizing the good work we're doing. And so I'm going to start with Moody's. We have strong financial stewardship. This is our this is similar to your own credit rating, and we have a AA1 Moody's rating, which is the second highest for public entities. And what it ultimately means is that when we're going for bonds or anything else, we're getting one of the best rates possible. And as George alluded to before, the reason we were able to refund our existing bonds and save the taxpayer dollars was because of that Moody's rating. In addition, I like to say as a board member, every penny counts because we count every penny. And that's just not me saying it. The Association of School Business Officials have given George, and not just George, but his department and the entire district, the Meritorious Budget Award for budget presentation for 7 straight years, and the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting for 7 straight years. While it may sound silly, but what that means is we take seriously how we report to the community what we're doing with their money. In addition, Government Finance Officers Association has given our district the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, again, 7 straight years. And the Auditor of State has shown us the award with distinction for our financial audit. In every year, we are audited by Columbus to make sure that we are appropriately tracking and accounting for every tax dollar, how it's brought in and how it's spent. And for the last 4 years, we've had that award with distinction. Again, these are things not only am I proud of as a board member and proud of our team as a board member, But these are recognitions that the entire community should take pride in. And then again, something that as a board we are extremely proud of, but ultimately we're a school district. So our final measurement should be on how well are we educating our students, the students in our Strongsville community. And the last grading cycle, we received the 5-star rating, which is significantly exceeds state standards. That's our overall rating. Districts are rated 1 to 5 stars. We've received the highest rating that any district can receive for the 2023 report card cycle. To give you some ideas of how to compare that, our district is one of only 75 school districts in Ohio to receive that 5-star rating. That's 75 out of over 600 districts. Getting a little deeper into it, our student growth measure, Strongsville City Schools is ranks 25th out of that 607 districts. We're in the top 4% on how well our students grow year over year. And one that I think all of us should be proud of, at the high school, we are 5th in Ohio out of over 3,000 buildings for that student growth measure. Again, we are now in not just the top 1%, we're in the top 0.2% out of all the schools in Ohio. This is something that as a team, we continue to work at year over year, day in and day out. And again, it's not something that just the board or our teachers or our students and parents should be proud of, but it's something that the entire district should take pride in. And it's proof to the pudding of what we do with the dollars entrusted to us.
Thank you, Mr. Micko. And why don't you stay on camera? And George, if you want to come back on camera as well. Want to just take a moment to thank all of our folks that tuned in to watch and to join us today and get informed. There is a tiny URL on the screen. If you hadn't had a chance and wanted to submit a question for one of us to answer during this time, you can still do that now, and we'd be more than happy to answer that. But I know we had a few questions that came in prior, so I'm going to ask our communications coordinator, Dan Faust, to come online with us and to share any questions that have been submitted, and then we'll kind of take it from there as we have a few minutes left in our presentation tonight.
Thanks, Cameron. We had a few come in advance of tonight's community conversation. So the first question is, can some of the money that the district has and or the money that's generated by the potential passage of a renewal levy be used to possibly eliminate pay to participate or full day kindergarten tuition in terms of fees for that parents might and families might be paying for our district?
Thanks, Dan, for that question. I'm going to ask Mr. Micko. Those are board level decisions that the board has made over the years. So I'm going to turn it over to you to share your thoughts on that one.
Thanks, Cameron. Both of those questions, let's start with some of just basic facts, and we'll start with full day kindergarten. Full day kindergarten would be a service that we would love to offer to the entire district. The fact of the matter is we are out of space. So we would have to address the space issue as part of that conversation. We're already addressing that. I look at the facts behind the renewal levy is just one part of a total conversation we're having with the community, not just the dollars and cents, but also our building. We as a board and as a admin team, along with parents, we have had a facilities committee that's working, and I don't think it's a secret to anyone that we are also working on a bond to deal with our growing district and how we want to address those issues. So part of full day kindergarten would just be addressing these students. The second part of it is kind of on the one hand and on the other hand. On the one hand, it would be it's a service, and there's a lot of arguments that as a board we've discussed about the benefits of full day kindergarten for our youngest learners. On the other hand, it's a drawdown on the dollars. And as we talked about, as George highlighted, the way school finances work, we're almost on a fixed budget and we draw down those dollars. So something like full day kindergarten, we would have to balance the upside of the service. And obviously parents of young students would want that, but then we would have to balance that with the demands on the taxpayer. And that is exactly the issue we're dealing with right now in this conversation. Same idea for pay to participate. If you're a parent or a student, those fees, certainly to draw them down seems attractive. As a board, we would have to balance that with when we make that a taxpayer funded obligation, what is the effect for the taxpayer? So that, yes, we could do that, and that would be something that the board would have to consider. And again, we'd have to consider the pluses and minuses and how that affects our budget and how we balance the needs of our student athletes and their parents with the needs of our taxpayers.
Dan, any other questions that came in?
Yeah, I have another one sort of playing off of what Mr. Micko talked about. You know, how does this renewal levy relate to the recently proposed bond issue for our district?
So I'll start, and Mr. Micko, if you want to jump in, feel free to do that. So as Mr. Micko had shared, we've been talking for about a year and a half about what are we going to do with our facilities across the district, being preschool facilities, elementary facilities, as well as athletics and performing arts facilities across the district. And so that's something that we've been sharing. Elementary facilities master plan has been developed. It's been presented to the board. It's been come to consensus and endorsed by the board. And as you may recall, the board made a first vote on a potential bond issue to be on the ballot. Yet due to the fact that the renewal levy failed in November, for obvious reasons, that had to be put on hold. So the need for facilities and space and improvements is not going away. In fact, every year that we wait, the price tag of that bond project, just because of cost increases, is going to go up, and we need to continue to manage short and long-term space issues across the district. So, at this point, the bond issue has been paused. The board direction has been that we need to take care of our operating funds first and foremost, but then we need to take a look at our facility needs moving forward. As we talked about earlier, of what has the district done with this $25 million? The $25 million was, per prior board conversation, was going to be used to help support a bond project and help support some of the work to address some of our facility needs. Depending on the timeline and how things go, we may need to use some of that money for one-time investments to deal with critical needs about how long our roofs, our windows, our HVAC is going to last, depending on when we're able to place a bond issue on the ballot and then determine community support. So it is very much still a need, but we can't do anything until we get our operating expenses solidified for the future years. That drives a lot of our planning. So Mr. Micko, I'll pause there to see if there's any additional thoughts you want to add.
Now, Cameron, you did a great job of summarizing what, as a board, we consider all the time. And ultimately, the way I consider it is what everyone wants is not just a healthy district, but a growing district. And that's growing on all fronts. That's growing on the offerings that we're making available to our students. That's growing. If we're doing our job well, our enrollment should be increasing, and it is. And just like anything else, our facilities, we want all of that to be not just healthy, but growing. And so the board had to pause the bond conversation because we need to make sure that we have a stable financial position just in our day-to-day operating funds. And that's what this renewal levy represents. And then we're looking forward to continuing that conversation of what does the district need to be growing and healthy and growing for the next 25, 35 years.
Dan, we still have a few minutes left, so other questions that came in.
Yeah, this one deals with just the framework or thinking about school financing and levies in general. Are there only a certain amount of times a levy can appear on the ballot?
George, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yes. So the earliest a renewal levy can, I guess I'll break it up in two different ways. So one for a renewal levy, as well, this is the case. For a renewal levy, you are limited on how many times you can go on the ballot, and not so many times, just the time period. So the earliest you can go on is in November, which we did. It was in the last election of the tax year that it's on. So the tax year ended for this was 2023. But the tax year is a year lag of the collection year. So the taxes that we're paying on now for collection year 2024 are based on tax year 23. So for this year, tax year 2024, we'll be collecting next year, which will be collection year 25. But the last year of the tax year, or the last election of the tax year where it expires, is the earliest you can go on. So November that just passed was the earliest it could go on. But looking at calendar year 2024, there's only two elections. There's a primary election in March, and then the general election in November. So those are our opportunities to put it on the ballot. If there were, in the past, there were other elections in between. If those existed, you would have opportunities there. But currently, if it doesn't pass by the collection year that it expires, which in this case would be November, then it expires. There's no more renewal levy. The levy expires. For new operating money, you can continue to go on for other levies such as new operating money, bond issues, and whatnot. There's no maximum number. You can continue to place those on the ballot. However, there is a cost associated with each time you're on the ballot as well. And it's just a decision by the board versus the community how many times you want to keep putting an issue out there.
Dan, I know we're almost out of time, and I want to do one conclusion part, show our audience where they can get some additional information. But any last questions that you think we should answer tonight while we're online together?
No, those were the questions that came through for tonight. So thank you for taking the time to answer those from our community.
Well, thank you, Dan, for sharing those in our community, for submitting those questions to us, and thanks for everybody for joining in. If you need to contact us at all, our information and email is on the left. You can follow us on the different social media platforms that we have there. And this video will live on demand through our SCS TV link on the website. But we want to remind everybody that we try to make the facts accessible for you at all times. And so if you simply go to strongnet.org and you scroll, this is our main page, you scroll down to the bottom, right at the bottom, right in the center, by the strategic planning graphic, click anywhere in this area. It gives you a brief overview of the renewal levy that will be on the March ballot, but you click anywhere in the screen and it will take you to a renewal levy fact page. So we've taken a lot of questions that we've received over the time period. We've got more data and more charts that are available for you. You've got the breakdown of where we have invested, as we talked about in the presentation. But if there's a question that's on your mind that hasn't been answered yet or is not in the FAQs, just simply, there's a link at the bottom, click there, ask that question. We will directly get back to you with the answer. And if we feel it's a question that other people may have, we'll add it to our fact page here online. So again, I want to thank you for being a part of this presentation tonight and tuning in. And if there's any questions we can answer moving forward, use the link on the website or contact us directly But we appreciate your engagement and your work in collaboration with the school district moving forward. Hope everybody has a wonderful evening.